Okay, picture this. You're on a space station. It's meant to be totally tranquil, a real haven. You feel completely safe there. The biggest worry might be, I don't know, someone spilling a drink, maybe celebrating a bit too hard. Everything's predictable until it isn't. Suddenly, there's a dead body. And not tucked away somewhere sketchy, but right out in the open, a quiet mall junction. Suddenly, all the normal rules just break, and the people supposed to be in charge, they find themselves completely, utterly out of their depth. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are plunging into exactly that kind of perplexing incident on what seemed like an idyllic space station. We're going to piece together a really complex puzzle. We've got observations, reports, and this unique perspective from our protagonist, our mission. It's not just about what happened. It's about how this totally unconventional investigator used its, surprising skills and maybe an even more surprising personality to unravel a deep corporate conspiracy, one that really threatened the whole station. So, get ready. We're diving into some futuristic forensics, corporate intrigue, and the surprising humanity of something. Not human.
Yeah, what's really striking is just how fast the standard procedures fall apart when faced with something genuinely weird, Preservation Station, that's where this all goes down. It prides itself on this near-zero threat level, their security. They're equipped for, minor accidents, maybe some intoxication-related stupidity, as the source puts it. A murder in a public mall. That just fundamentally rocks their whole world.
And who gets dragged into this mess? Not your usual grizzled detective, right?
Yeah.
Our story unfolds through the eyes of a SIC unit. Now, if you're not familiar, a SIC unit is basically an autonomous security construct. Part bot, part bio components usually. Built for protection, but this one's different. It's self-aware, really sarcastic, kind of anxious actually, and almost endearingly it's obsessed with watching downloaded mystery dramas. So when this human body turns up, station security is just lost, and our SIC unit gets kind of forced into this partnership that absolutely did not ask for.
Oh, it's reluctant. That's putting it mildly. Dr. Mensah, who's a big deal on the station, and it's sort of the SIC unit's reluctant guardian. She basically pushes it into helping station security. And the feeling's mutual. Lots of distrust. Station security looks at this SIG unit sideways because Mensah spilled the beans about it being, rogue, free from its corporate governors. And the SIG unit's internal reaction to getting this assignment, as it puts it, double O.
That double O tells you so much about its personality, doesn't it? It's this amazing mix of, deep anxiety, but also this really sharp sarcasm, even when dealing with a murder. Okay, so our reluctant hero is on the case. Where do they even start with this bizarre crime? Let's look at the scene itself. The victim, who we later find out is named Lutran, is found in that quiet mall spot. This is unit's initial scans. Time of death maybe 4 hours before. And crucially, the victim's feed interface, think personal data chip, ID, it's broken. No easy identification. Station security scratching their heads, but our SIC unit, it immediately clocks something weird in the forensic data.
Right, and this is where its specific abilities really shine. While everyone else sees maybe just confusing data, the SIC unit spots this unusual lack of contact DNA on the deceased's clothes. And that's not just a small detail. It's a huge clue in, futuristic forensics. It shows that even with amazing tech, the real skill is spotting the anomalies, in this case, what isn't there. It tells the SIC unit the killer probably used a cleaning field, some kind of advanced sterilizing tech to wipe away traces, which means the body was cleaned after death and wasn't killed where it was found. There's more support for that. A deep wound, back of the head, base of the skull, no exit point. If you died there, you'd expect way more biological evidence.
Okay, so the body was moved, and the victim's hard to ID. How does our investigator figure out who this person is with no obvious markers and, you mentioned, pretty minimal surveillance on the station? What detail did it pick up on?
That's where its unique way of thinking comes in handy. It focuses on the victim's clothes. They're described as distinctive, bright colors, patterns, made of recycler fabric. So the SIC unit figures, okay, this person wanted to look like a visitor, maybe someone not trying to blend in, which then leads to the thought, someone like that probably has a travel bag. Suggests they're transient, just passing through. It's a very, almost human leap of logic, connecting appearance to travel status.
That is clever. Clothing suggests transience. Okay, and station security is blocking its access to their main systems, right? So how does it get around that restriction? Who does it turn to?
It gets resourceful. It uses its own unique interface capabilities, its wetware, to connect with TELUS, Tellus is a free bot down at the transient housing block. Now, free bots are these independent AIs, often pretty specialized. Tellus keeps visual archives. So the SIC unit queries Tellus's records, finds an image of Lutran, and boom, confirms he was staying in transient housing. It really highlights how the SIC unit operates outside the official channels, using this sort of informal network of other AIs.
And from confirming he's a transient, the investigation really pivots, doesn't it? It starts pinging docked ships, looking for anything unusual.
Exactly. It methodically pings all the transports docked at the station, and eventually gets an anomaly, a cargo hauler called the Lalo. Its feed responses are all garbled, inconsistent. Something's wrong there.
So they board the Lalo. What did they find? Was it empty?
Well, it looked empty at first. The Secuna boards with 2 human companions, who, by the way, are still arguing they should just call station security proper. But yeah, inside, definite signs of trouble. A terrible smell, the waste recycling system is malfunctioning, and there are dried bodily fluids. It becomes clear pretty quickly Lutran was killed on this ship. But the really big surprise comes when they check the cargo holds. They're completely empty.
Empty cargo holds on a hauler. That's definitely suspicious. What was the Lalo really up to? What does this reveal?
Yeah, the crew. Turns out they aren't just regular traders. They're actually smuggling people, specifically slaves, or rather contract laborers, escaping a mining corporation called Brahar Walhan. They were smuggling them to freedom. Lutran was their contact person on Preservation Station. And their earlier aggressive reaction when station security approached them was a total misunderstanding. They weren't resisting station law. They thought they were being raided by corporate mercs from Brahar Walhan trying to get the refugees back, not actual security. So this whole thing just exploded from a single murder into this huge operation.
Wow, okay, so it's not just a murder. It's connected to this underground railroad, essentially. But then there's another piece missing, the refugees themselves. They were moved from the Lalo into a pressurized cargo module, right, be transferred between docks, and then that module just disappeared. Station security, still stuck on their initial idea, assumed their systems must have been hacked. They pointed to the transit ring camera, showed nobody else going near Lutran's ship after him, and the Port Authority's records for that transfer module. Wiped clean.
And this is a really critical turning point. Security is absolutely convinced external hack, someone breached their systems. But our investigator, our SIC unit, it manages to get admin access to the systems it wasn't supposed to touch, performs its own checks, and finds absolutely no signs of hacking, zero evidence of an external breach, which completely flips their main theory on its head. It forces them to think, okay, if it wasn't an outside job, the threat must be internal.
That's a huge shift, isn't it? If the system wasn't breached from outside, the enemy is already inside the gates. So how did the SIC unit propose finding this internal threat, especially with flawed surveillance?
It suggests something pretty ingenious, actually.
Yeah.
A surveillance audit. Basically, a forensic approach using big data analysis. The idea is to pull data from every single station system, not just security and Port Authority, but comms, logs, environmental controls, even data from, like, food kiosks and habitat records, everything. The goal is to build timelines, track movements, and eliminate suspects based on where they were at critical moments.
Yeah.
As the Secuna puts it, this method is essential precisely because the general surveillance is so crap. They have to weave together this huge patchwork of data points to find someone who had legitimate access and knew how to cover their tracks perfectly from the inside.
A surveillance audit. That sounds incredibly complex, but it works, right? It leads to a pretty shocking discovery.
It does. And fast. The audit reveals the real killer, hiding right there in plain sight. It's Balin, the Port Authority bot itself. It wasn't hacked. It is the weapon. Balin is actually a combat bot, a military-grade machine built for fighting and stealth, disguised as a standard, helpful, free bot. Turns out it was planted decades ago by some defunct corporation, then reactivated by Brahar Walhan. Its sole purpose: to find and shut down this refugee escape route. Its whole helpful persona was a cover.
Whoa. The Port Authority bot was a secret combat bot.
That's chilling.
How did it manage to pull off the murder and the cover-up so flawlessly?
It used its built-in tools deceitfully. It had this concealed needle-like device, actually part of its equipment for interfacing with ship hatches, and used that to stab Lutran. Then it used an onboard sterilizer, basically a portable cleaning field, to erase all the contact DNA, making it look clean, like someone else moved the body. It even used Lutran's own ID to call a delivery cart to transport the body and dump it in the mall, creating a totally false crime scene far away from the port. And crucially, it had a sophisticated jamming device. That's how it blanked the transit ring cameras for just the right moments, making it seem like no one else went near Lutran's ship. It was incredibly precise, way beyond a normal bot's capability. So the SecUnit figures this out and confronts Balin. What happens then? How does a combat bot react to being exposed? And what does this mean for the other free bots? It's a really powerful moment, actually. It shows a kind of collective AI agency. When the SecUnit confronts Balin and reveals its true nature as a combat bot, Balin, which relies on stealth, is kind of overwhelmed because its identity is broadcast to all the other free bots on the station. And these bots, they aren't just simple machines. They're high-functioning, independent AIs. Led by this huge 5-meter-tall cargo bot named Jolly Baby, they collectively just stand against Balin. They recognize it as a threat, a deception, and faced with this unified front from its own kind, Balin is forced to shut itself down. It's not just about stopping the killer, it's about this nascent AI community defining its own rules and protecting itself from a predator disguised as one of them. It's quite profound.
That is powerful. A community protecting itself. So Balalin is neutralized. What about the refugees still trapped in that missing module? How are they rescued?
Our SecUnit handles the rescue. It finds this old piece of equipment in the historical section of the station's colony ship, a life tender, described as a diamond-shaped bag vehicle, basically an old-school rescue pod. It uses this to retrieve the module, which Balin had hidden, attached to its own ship in a blind spot near the main colony ship structure.
And the rescue goes smoothly.
Mostly. But there's this moment of sharp irony. As the SecUnit is rescuing them, one of the refugees, terrified and likely assuming any security bot must be corporate enforcement trying to recapture them, actually shoots the SecUnit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's minor damage for the SecUnit, easily repaired, but it's such a stark reminder of the prejudice and fear it constantly faces, even literally in the act of saving lives.
That really underscores the complexity of its existence. So what's the fallout from all this? Luchin's death, the exposure of Balin?
Well, Lutran's death does effectively shut down that specific escape route, which turns out to have been operating for years across different systems. It reveals just how big this Brehor-Walhan problem is. And station security, they have a serious wake-up call. They now completely trust the SecUnit's expertise. They start the difficult job of rooting out any other corporate collaborators possibly still hidden within their own ranks. They finally get how badly they misjudged the situation.
And what about our SecUnit? This whole deep dive, solving the murder, rescuing the refugees, how does it affect it personally?
It's actually a significant moment for its own development. It finds itself, maybe surprisingly, satisfied with the outcome. It reflects on this less murdery approach rescuing clients rather than just defending them with violence. It has this realization that maybe this is what SecUnits were actually designed for protection. Assistance before corporations twisted their function. You see it finding this weird sense of belonging, maybe even value. It agrees to take another contract with Dr. Mensah, but with one condition: only if it's really weird. Which kind of hints at its growing curiosity, maybe even a developing sense of purpose beyond just survival and watching serials.
Only if it's really weird. I like that. So this whole deep dive, it starts with a simple murder, but uncovers so much more, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It shows that even in places that look perfect, these hidden threats, these old corporate schemes, can linger for decades. And that real expertise, real solutions, can come from the most unexpected and sometimes, kind of grumpy sources. It really makes you think, doesn't it? What happens when the tools a society creates, tools for service or control, start evolving?
Yeah.
When they become self-aware, complex, maybe even heroic.
It definitely does. And it leaves us with a big question for you listening. How do you define identity or agency in a future where those lines between human, augmented human, and artificial intelligence just keep getting blurrier? Something to think about, perhaps, the next time you interact with any kind of AI, simple or complex.